Vladimir Putin's Victory Day parade was reportedly interrupted yesterday by hackers who tried to convey an anti-war message to the Russian people. According to the Washington Post, text reading, "The blood of thousands of Ukrainians and hundreds of murdered children is on your hands," appeared on Russian smart TV during Putin's celebratory day. Another message reportedly read, quote, "TV and the authorities are lying. No to war." The Russian equivalents of YouTube and Google also say they were affected. Meanwhile, back in February, barely a week after Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, Russian authorities shut down several independent news outlets in the country. Following the harsh crackdown, our next guest, who was the chief editor of an independent online news channel, announced that he's leaving Russia after the government blocked his media organization. In a Telegram message, he alleged the blockage was illegal, adding, quote, "The personal safety of some of us is now under threat." And Tikhon Zyatsko joins us now. He's a Russian journalist, television presenter, and media manager, and now serves as editor-in-chief of TV Rain, a private Russian station. So I guess my first question to you is, where are you able to get your information to through TV Rain? Are you able to reach Russian people?
First of all, thank you for having me here. TV Rain is not operating now. We were forced to shut down the operation of the TV station because it became too dangerous for us, and several dozens of our journalists decided to flee the country, and now we are abroad. Me, for example, I am in Tbilisi, Georgia, and we launch our own individual YouTube channels where we are telling people about news about Ukraine. And we are now discussing the options to relaunch TV Rain somewhere in Europe, I guess. But so what is important that our shows on our individual YouTube channels are being watched. Something like 60% of our viewers, they are in Russia, which means that there are still a lot of people who are eager to get independent information, and that's the most important thing for us.
So you're able to reach Russians, you feel, through these, at least YouTube at this point, but there is a following, you think, inside Russia?
Well, yes, that's correct. A lot of Russians are watching our TV station, but the situation is interesting because since the beginning of the war, all independent media, all independent news outlets were blocked in Russia, and Facebook was blocked in Russia, and Twitter and Instagram. Only YouTube and Telegram are not blocked, and they are not blocked yet. I think they will be blocked. But still a lot of Russians, they are using VPN services. They are using some other tools to get through these restrictions, to get through these restrictions made by the Russian government to follow the real information.
So let me ask you, though, the appetite for that real information. It's obviously something on a different level we fought in the United States. There's some people who willingly go to conspiracy websites, who willingly go to channels where they know they're going to be fed disinformation that reinforces their pre-existing prejudices every day. And so I think we Americans have naively believed that every Russian citizen is a victim of this disinformation, and if only they had a free, open exchange of ideas, that they would understand the war in Ukraine was a terrible crime against humanity. But it hasn't really played out that way. So explain to us what portion of the Russian citizenry actually sit and watch state-run TV, because it reinforces their views of a greater Russia, their views of a powerful Russia, their views of their place in history.
Well, that's one of the main questions I don't have an answer. The problem is that no one knows what do Russians actually think. Because when we look at the polls, we see that 83% of Russians support the war. But of course, these polls could not be trusted because it's impossible to conduct poll in an authoritarian state or in a state worse than authoritarian state. Just imagine making a sociology poll in Nazi Germany in 1942, for example.
Right.
So it's obvious that these 83% are fake. But what is not fake that there is, of course, there is a big group of Russian people of Russian society, people who are following state TV, state propaganda, and who truly believe that the United States wants to destroy Russia and wants to make a Nazi state from Ukraine, that there is a lot of Nazis in Ukraine, and that Ukraine wanted to attack Russia, and all these stupid things. But at the same time, there is a huge part of the Russian population, of the Russian people, who are against the war, but they are just afraid to speak out because it's too dangerous. There is a law which was adopted by the parliament 1 month and a half ago, which says that if you spread so-called fake news information about Russian military in Ukraine, you could face up to 15 years in jail. And fake news means here even calling the war and not the special military operation. That's why, for example, almost all the independent journalists left Russia, because it's impossible to call the white, the black, and the war in Russia now. It's just illegal. But of course, a lot of people, they are victims of the propaganda. But I think that some of these people, they want to believe in what state propaganda tells them.
So obviously, the access to the truth, to independent media, fuels a lot of protest movement. That's around the globe, not just in Russia. But we saw in the early days of the war, some protesters take to the streets. But give us an update as to what we've seen since. That has largely dried up, yes, because of these potential protests. We get the occasional tweet from Navalny, who's in prison. But give us an update, if you will, about where the protest movement stands in Russia. Are people able to speak out at all?
Well, people are not protesting now. I mean, there is no big protest in Russia, because the protests at the beginning of the war, they were attacked by the police, and a lot of people were detained, and a lot of people were fined for protesting. And now it became more dangerous, because if you, for example, go out in the street and you say no to war, or the war has to be stopped, you could face a criminal charges, because you could be accused of spreading fake news information about Russian military. So there is no big protest in Russia now, because, as I said, people are afraid, people are depressed. The psychological, moral situation in Russia now, I'm not there, but I speak to my friends there a lot. People are really depressed because they are living in a country which is having a terrible war, and you could, as I say, it's not safe to protest against this war. For example, famous Russian politician, and which is well known in the United States, Vladimir Karamurza, he's now in jail, and he faces up to 10 years for so-called fake news information about Russian military in Ukraine. So people are not protesting, but I know, and we know, that a lot of people, a huge part of Russian society, is against the war.
All right, Tikhon Zyadko, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. Tikhon was chief editor of an independent online news channel who left Russia after the government blocked his media organization at the start of the war, but he's still working on getting the message out.